So I probably shouldn't even be making this video. I'll probably pay for it later. But something that I feel is important to raise awareness about and to share is a mental illness called borderline personality disorder. It's something people don't talk about a lot because there's a lot of stigma attached to it. Especially since not that long ago, mental health professionals used to believe we were a lost cause that could not be treated and were basically considered a waste of psychiatrists' time. I've been in DBT therapy for a few months, probably more. I have no sense of time. And under times of severe stress, things get worse and my symptoms become worse. Those that follow my Mills family channels know that Andrea Mills passed away a week or so ago. And during that time, from the moment she was in the hospital to the moment she passed away, I had all sorts of feelings and emotions, and it was painful. Some might say I actually have a phobia of feeling, especially feeling sadness. I'm terrified of it because I know there's nothing I can do about it. And the pain will just hurt until time passes on. During that week, I was actually, after she passed away officially, I had been at my happiest, but not in a healthy way. I got into some very aggressive confrontations with different strangers. Why? I don't know. My confidence was up. And I think that happens when you start to just deny your feelings, run from your feelings. That your confidence goes up because you're not acknowledging your own issues. I ended up spending lots of money that I didn't have. Trying to just fuel a high and keep it going. Unlike with people with bipolar disorder, that high isn't consistent. It falls apart very quickly and then could just come back randomly. Borderline personality disorder often stems from child abuse experiences and also has a strong genetic component. My biological mother has mental illness that is not diagnosed, and I don't speak to her. All the issues in borderline personality disorder, all the symptoms, which include identity issues, mood disturbances, feeling everything very deeply and intensely, constant threats of suicide, and has one of the highest suicide rates of all mental illnesses, and is also one of the most common mental illnesses. All the symptoms stem from a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection, and you'll find ways to make yourself think you're being abandoned. Why? Because you're so terrified of it happening. Like, you feel like you have to make sure the situation is foolproof. that you will never be rejected, that you will never be abandoned. So, like a chameleon, you'll take on the personality and the traits of the people around you to keep them around you. You'll toss yourself and who you really are in the trash if you even still remember who you are. And just try to keep the people around you there. But at the same time, you have this constant paranoia of what they're saying about you behind your back. Are they going to leave you? Or is there going to be a fight that's going to be the end of everything? You just constantly have that thought in your head. Am I feeling more about this person than they're feeling about me? And then you self-sabotage all your relationships based on your paranoia of something that may not even be happening, which has happened to me way more times than I'm willing to admit. That you convince yourself the people around you hate you and they don't want you around. And so you act on that belief by turning them against you, starting a fight, and then crying when exactly what you wanted to happen happens because you feel abandoned. It may not make a whole lot of sense. Nothing about BPD makes any sense. But that's just how it feels. It's how it is. Everything hurts. And you're constantly afraid and anticipating rejection and abandonment. There's another symptom that's constant emptiness. You always feel empty inside, like a void you're trying to fill that can never be filled. And I describe this feeling as feeling like desperation. This desperate need to feel safe and loved, even though you'll never have it because you won't let yourself. We tend to make the people around us miserable. And people around us have trouble understanding what we're going through and what we're feeling. And the fact that only recently that therapists, psychiatrists have decided to be more compassionate towards us. There's a lot of books, a lot of stigma that'll tell you that you can't save us and that we're not capable of love. Even though that couldn't be farther from the truth, that you should just leave and abandon us. And those kind of things are devastating because you're basically making their issues worse. It's a terrible mental disorder that will always find a way to ruin you and make you feel miserable. And oftentimes when people with BPD are under high stress, they do what's called dissociating, which is where you kind of detach from yourself. You don't feel like the you that's in control right now is you, even though it is, and you're not like psychotic. You know this is you, but it doesn't feel like it. And sometimes people with BPD in these situations can experience psychosis. It's a way of coping with the immense stress and fear that they can't handle. And the only way to treat it is not with medication. It's with lots of DBT therapy, a therapy that was designed specifically for people with BPD. It's based off of Buddhist principles. And it's hard. Every therapy session is hard. It's painful. But it is said to work, even though it will take a lot of time. The reason I'm talking about this is I want people to understand what it's like to hurt so much. It's like I'm literally afraid to hurt, even though my disorder makes me constantly feel hurt. I can't watch movies. Not movies that I've already, unless I've seen it once, and even just getting me to watch a movie once, it's going to be a pretty challenging thing. Because there's always so much emotion in movies, which is good. That's part of what makes the movie enjoyable and special and unique. But it's also what makes it hard for people like me to watch. When I was less than 13 years old, I watched all sorts of shows that were really dramatic, including anime. And then I just remember when I was 13 watching Naruto, a show I loved at that time, and suddenly, the pain and emotion that was in it had become too much for me. I had a total mental breakdown watching it, and then I just started avoiding anything with any amount of drama or anything new. Terrified to feel pain that I knew I couldn't erase, that I couldn't cope with. I constantly feel alone and unloved, no matter how much I know that's not true. There's a part of me that doesn't know that's true, that doesn't know that. And every day is a battle. People with BPD are prone to things like alcoholism and drug use, violence, all sorts of things. Reckless sex, anything of that sort. It's all people trying to fill this void in this hole in their heart with all these activities, or just to not feel anything. Because in those moments, I have never done drugs or any of those things, but I have often thought about it for the sake of just not feeling, to just forget all my problems and let them disappear for a moment. But at the same time, that probably doesn't really help long term. It just makes you a drug addict and makes you worse in the long run. Sometimes I just want to say, screw it. I don't care if I'm worse. At least I don't know it. At least I don't feel it. Safe from myself. Mental health is something really important to me, because I've been in therapy since I was 9. And I've had problems all my life. And despite not doing the most dramatic things like my own mother has done, I still have basically torn my own life up. And not even realizing it till now. All of it just me constantly thinking that I know what the other person thinks about me. And then trying to defend myself against those ideas. Which of course creates a fight that didn't exist. BPD, despite being one of the most common mental illnesses, a lot of people have even never heard of, because people don't talk about it, because they're afraid. The moment you say you have borderline personality disorder, people assume you're a wreck, which you are, probably, and they don't want to put in the effort that it takes to be around you. People with BPD have very unstable relationships. And often, since we have such insecurities, we end up in relationships with men who are abusive and damaging, thinking that, well, at least they're here. And still doing everything we can to keep them from leaving. One of the symptoms of BPD is desperate attempts to escape perceived or real abandonment. So let's say you feel like someone's going to leave you, like your boyfriend's going to leave you. You'll do everything you can to prevent that. Even fighting, which of course does not prevent it, but you're trying. That's what your purpose of your anger is. Then they leave and you fall apart and you beg them to come back. It's like constantly acting like a different person. One moment you're telling someone to get out of your life, but when they actually do it, you fall apart and you beg them to come back. And if they do, then you're happy again, but then the cycle continues. I don't know if I'm making any sense with all this. I've probably been talking way too long. 15 minutes, so yeah. Just had a lot I had to get out there. And that people know me as being a wreck. An emotional wreck. And for the longest time, BPD was only diagnosed in women. Because basically, that's what they saw, being emotionally unstable was always associated with a woman. But now they are realizing there are a lot of men with it too. So now some men are being diagnosed with it. It's a mental illness you can only be diagnosed with as an adult, because when you're younger, your emotions are going to be unstable. Because you're a kid, you're a teenager, it's going to happen. People with BPD, we don't know who we are. We don't know what to believe in, what to follow. Because in the end, that's not our goal. Our goal is to just be cared for by somebody to love us. Even if they already do and we just don't see it. We'll do whatever it takes to either chase after love or just forget ourselves, get drunk and just screw ourselves up. Act like we don't need love even though we feel like we do. It's a constant battle with ourselves, and a battle that doesn't even exist. Most people, 70% of people with BPD have faced child abuse. Over half of them, sexual child abuse. And the rest of that 70%, other forms of child abuse. I just wanted to share my experiences of what BPD feels like while I'm being honest with myself, because that won't last. Even though I'm aware of all these things that I'm saying, doesn't mean they're going to stick. Doesn't mean I'm not going to destroy my life next week, Because I can't seem to control my own mind. So if I could say just one more thing, is that when someone's a drug addict or an alcoholic, and I have experiences with abusive alcoholics, so I know how hard it can be. But know that they are all sick, and you need to love them anyway, even if it's from a distance. Not to turn against them or badmouth them, because then you're just proving them right that you didn't love them. People always want to see drug users and all these sick people as if they're, bad. But they already know they're bad. That's why they're doing it. They feel like they've already destroyed their lives. They've already lost everything. And they know they feel like they're bad. Like they're just inherently born a bad person. So why bother trying to be a better one if it's going to be so hard and painful? So just always be there for them and show them your support. Doesn't mean you have to give them money out of every problem they're in, but still don't chase them out your house. Don't ignore their calls unless they're harassing you. You need to still be there for them. Because they're people, and they didn't turn to that life because they wanted to. They just believed they didn't have a choice. Whether it's true or not isn't the point. So I'm starting to ramble here, so I'm just gonna end this video. And I hope maybe it's taught some people some things about life with borderline personality disorder and what their loved ones go through and what I go through.